Hello everyone. Please, if you don't already, please turn on your cameras. I want to see you guys. This is an interactive session. You're going to actually participate in this session. So please, I want to see you all. If your camera is turned off, please turn it on. Okay, so I'm going to start with my last slide at the very beginning. Okay, so this is my last slide. It's actually a slide from McKinsey. They just published this report a few days ago, and what they're finding out is that history suggests that corporations that invest in innovation during a crisis outperform their peers during the recovery by up to 30%. So we're going to talk about why this is happening, and most importantly, what's very, very different in this crisis compared to all previous economic crises in the past. So a couple words about myself. I'm not an expert in anything. The only expertise I bring to the table is time spent in the tech sector. I started my career just graduated from computer science just before the tech bubble burst in 1999. Lost my job when the bubble burst, worked in 2008, the other recession at EMC corporations in Massachusetts. And over the past 10 years, I've been lucky enough to work with in the management teams of two very successful startups. The first in the mobility space that we sold to Intel, and the other in the musical education space, that is a company that is doing extremely well, even before COVID, but especially during COVID. And in OurCrowd, my role is to connect corporations with Israeli innovation. Now, when I'm saying that I'm not an expert of anything, I'm for sure not an expert in psychology. But I assume most of you would agree with me that while the nature of this crisis is medical, the implications on the economy are mostly psychological. So many of you are probably familiar with the Kubler-Ross model. It's also known as the 5 stages of grief. And it basically describes how humans react to radical change. So I can definitely talk about myself saying, I started in a complete denial. I thought this, virus from China would never make its way all the way to Israel. And guess what? I was wrong. And when I was wrong, I got really, really depressed. I mean, ask my wife. All the plans we made together, everything just like flew out of the window. And now I think I'm in the bargaining phase. Basically, I'm sharing with my experiences with complete strangers. So that's bargaining. So I promised an interactive session. So let's see how you guys are feeling today. There's going to be polls that we're going to run throughout this 15 next minutes. Tell us how you feel today. Are you in COVID denial? Are you depressed? Are you on the way to acceptance? Maybe you already accepted in your reality. Let's take 4 seconds and see the results. Okay, so you guys, let's see the results. Okay, so 60% of you are on their way to acceptance. So like me, I feel in good company. Okay, so why am I telling you all this? Because there's another human phenomenon that's called the mere exposure effect. And that is basically our tendency as human beings to focus on what's familiar. There's solid research that shows that corporate executives would always choose a familiar solution to a problem over a less familiar solution to a problem that might prove better results. Now, because humans are running corporations, corporations tend to behave in the exact same way. They focus on what's familiar, on what's safe and predictable. They focus on their core business. To the extent that McKinsey also finds out that the commitment of innovation of CEOs has decreased by about 32 percentage points because they'd rather focus in these times on what's safe and predictable, on their core business. But reality is that just focusing on what's safe and predictable is really bad for business because the corporate graveyards are full with corporations that have played it safe and predictable for way too long after the economy has changed. BlackBerry, for example, played it safe and predictable on a very lucrative business for way too long after the iPhone and the app stores were introduced. Now, this is hard data. Credit Suisse has found out that the lifespan of S&P 500 companies is decreasing exponentially from 60 years to less than 20 years today to just about 12 in a few years from now. Now, there is a little button on your screen that's called chat. I'd like you to please click on that chat button and tell me why this is happening. What do you think? Why does the lifespan of S&P 500 companies is decreasing so rapidly? Little chat icon, hands on the keyboard. This is an interactive session. Tell me, why do you think the lifespan of S&P 500 companies is decreasing? I'm waiting. Technology, says Danny. David says competition, innovation, and paradigm shift. Nice. Any other ideas? Privatization, says Jonathan. Okay, guys, I'm going to sum it up. You all correct. I'm going to sum it up in 2 words. It's called technology disruption. Tech disruption. It basically means that a new product, a new technology is introduced to market that renders all previous products obsolete. For example, what the iPhone did to all previous phones. Now, tech disruption on its own is nothing new. It's been with us since the Industrial Revolution, or when the car disrupted the horse. What's new is the pace, the speed in which it happens. Now, take a look at this chart. It shows the tech adoption of Americans over the past 100 years. It took Americans 50 years to adopt electricity in their homes. It took them less than 10 to adopt the smartphone. But that was even before COVID. What COVID is doing to tech adoption is it, exponentially accelerated it, like no time before in human history, like no time before. And there's plenty of indicators. If it's Amazon that's hiring 100,000 employees to meet demand, if it's Ocado, it's the largest online UK supermarket in the UK, they introduced virtual queues. You had to wait for 2 hours, wait just to get into the website and do your grocery shopping. It's insane. And there's plenty of other examples. Now, you may claim, and very wisely, that for every company that has been lucky during COVID, there's plenty others that don't, like Uber or Airbnb. And it's true. But there's 3 things that are radically different. The first one is that tech adoption is now reaching new demographics, like the elderly. Never happened before. The second is that it's changing consumer behaviors. It's changing human behaviors. And the last thing, as a corporation, it basically fuels a shift to the cloud, because the on-premise IT infrastructure was not designed to support work from home. Now, let's take a very, very quick look, a recap of what's happened here over the past 3 months. So in the UK, for the first time in 700 years, MPs are allowed to vote online. In New York, you can get married online. In Israel, you can file a complaint with the police online. We're all working from home online. And you know what? It's working well, to the extent that all surveys that people are running, this is one from INSEAD, they show that most people think, claim that their productivity improved. So let's see, this group, has your productivity improved? Let's see, more productive, less productive, are the same as before. And let's stop now and see the results. Okay, 57% of you feel more productive, 38% same as before. So pretty much in line, to the extent that the Morgan Stanley CEO says, we don't need all this much of a real estate. And the Barclays CEO says the crowded offices might be a thing of the past. The Fortune, in the recent issue of the Fortune magazine, they interviewed Fortune 500 CEO, they surveyed them, and the vast majority says, when would at least 90% of your workforce have returned to their usual workplace? Never. It's not gonna happen, not because we're gonna lay them off, they're saying, just because we don't need so many people in our offices. And I didn't even talk about telemedicine, just the ability to pick up the phone, speak with the doctor, get diagnosed online. It was kind of, would you really do that 10 years ago? Absolutely not. But now, most American, over 50% of them are either tried, have either tried telemedicine or are willing to try. And those who tried, 97% of them want to book a second appointment. And I didn't even talk about online grocery shopping. Everyone's talking about online grocery shopping. Guys, it's more than tripled in March compared to August. And the amazing thing is that about 40% of them are senior citizens buying for the first time. The CEO of Microsoft puts this in a nice summary. We've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation happening in just 2 months. And what do you think is going to happen when COVID is behind us? Are we going back? Never happened in human history. The tech adoption has reversed. And if I had to put what's happening now on that same chart, it would have looked like a straight line up, the digitization of everything that's not digital. Okay, enough about tech adoption. Now let's talk about automation. And by automation, I mean the process by which humans are replaced by machine. We tend to think about it intuitively as a gradual process. Every year, more machines are replacing more humans. And guys, this is wrong. It's simply not the case. Automation is centered around economic crisis. It happens in bursts. The data shows that the previous 3 recessions were followed by spikes of automation. It happened in 2008, happened in 2000, and it happened in 1991. And the reason is that the relative cost of labor goes up when companies' revenues go down. So they simply lay off employees. Now, the question is which employees are losing their job? And unsurprisingly, the vast majority of them are low-income employees that do routine work jobs that can be easily automated. And the people that lost their jobs in the past, but also now, are replaced by a mix of technology and highly skilled employees. Now you can see on the chart on the right, following the years following the 2008 recession, there's been a spike in the requirement for better educated employees with more experience, and most importantly, with better computer skills. Now here's the slide that is at least blowing me away, because the automation potential of the US workforce is double digit. And it's actually 46%. And this is data from the Brookings Institute. It's a research institute in DC, but this data is pretty much in sync with data from McKinsey and PwC. Guys, double digits. And if you look at the industry with the highest automation potential, by potential, I mean potential, it doesn't mean that the jobs will actually be automated. It's just have the potential. We're talking about accommodation and food services. And these are exactly the same people that have lost their jobs right now. Restaurant workers, hotel workers. So another question for you. Get your fingers ready on your keyboards, okay? What is radically different from a technology perspective in this recession compared to the previous 3 recessions, okay? David is saying education. Communication, says Elisa. What's radically different from a technology perspective in this recession compared to all 3? From a tech perspective, urgency, says Jay. Healthcare, it's universal. Okay, guys, almost. I'll tell you what's the main difference, okay? The main difference is that today we have a technology that can replace humans, not just in manual labor, like in all previous years. We can replace humans, technology can replace humans in tasks that require cognitive skills. Never happened before. The use of AI, machine learning, deep learning is gonna radically change the workforce in years to come. It's still early stage today, but it was super early stage in 2008, was theoretical in 2000 and science fiction in 1991, but the impact on the job force in this world in the next 10 years is gonna be dramatic. Personally, I can say I've been working in tech for more than 20 years. This is super exciting time to work in tech. Super exciting time. It's less exciting times to work in policy making because the governments have to address the growing divide, the growing digital divide in the workforce. Okay, so let's talk about the good times. And I think the past 10 years have been pretty good for everyone. And if you're looking at the top 10 publicly traded companies by market cap, you could see that in 2010, only 2 of the top 10 companies were technology companies. Only 2, Microsoft and Apple. If you're looking at the situation right now, the end of Q1 2020, the top 7 are tech companies. So bear this slide in mind. We're going to get back to it in just a second. Now let's talk about the bad times. And in the bad times, the COVID times, we have to think about 2 terms. We have to kind of get used to them. 2 terms. The first is acceleration. The other one is transformation. And by acceleration, I mean an increase in the adoption rate of existing technologies for a given sector. Think about financial services. They would need to accelerate their move to digitization. Now, the technologies for digitization are already on the shelf. They're right there. They just need to be adopted. And that move needs to be accelerated. On the flip side, we have transformation, the need of new technologies or repurposing of technologies to meet the new normal. Think about airports. They need to transform from security to biosecurity. So there's a way to look at it on a chart. We like charts in OurCrowd. So if you look at this chart, the horizontal axis is the relative impact of COVID on a certain sector. And the vertical axis is on the top is the need of new technologies versus need of existing technologies. And you can see, for example, that air travel is pretty much skewed on the top right. So a question for you guys. How do you define your sector? How is your sector affected by COVID? Do you need to accelerate the adoption of existing tech? Do you require new tech or repurposing of tech? Or maybe you need a mix of both. So let's give you exactly 4 seconds. Need of existing technologies, new technologies, or a mix of the two. And now let's see the results. Okay, wow, 76% need a mix of new and existing technologies. The CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies, they're saying, by the way, 75% of them, just like you, they need to accelerate. Okay, I'm running very quickly because we're short on time. So the key solution to growth, I think all of us, given the increased tech adoption and the increase in automation and the prevalence of AI, we need innovation. And there's 2 types of innovation. There's incremental innovation, basically the move from a 3-blade razor to a 5-blade razor. And there is disruptive innovation, what Netflix did to the DVD or what Spotify did to the CD. So another question for you, and please answer this only if you work in a corporation, only if you're an executive in a corporation. Who are your competitors? Is it another big corporation? Is it an SMB? Are they startups? Maybe they're not even on this list. So 4 seconds, big corporation, SMBs, startups, or not on this list. And now let's see what you're saying. Okay, very, very mixed group of answers. So let me try to tell you what I think, okay? So if you work in a corporation and you think that your competition is another corporation, it means you're thinking about innovation in an incremental manner, because disruptive innovation never comes for another big corporation. If you said startups, then you're looking into disruptive innovation models of competition, because the competitors here are very, very hard to see, okay? Because there's so many. And these startups, they just focus on one thing, and that one thing they do really, really well. And as a group, they go after every single line of business of a corporation. Now I'm gonna illustrate it maybe in a quick example. Tell me, only iPhone users, that's the last poll for today. Only iPhone users, are you using Apple Maps? Okay, I mean, not Google Maps, Apple Maps. There's a difference, just Apple Maps. Okay, so let's see the results. Okay, 73%, actually 78% are not using Apple Maps. Now, how is it possible, right? I mean, it's preloaded on the phone. How is it possible nobody's or most people don't use Apple Maps? And we have to look into history, okay? In 2012, Apple launched Apple Maps, and it was a disaster. When you were looking for London, you would get London in Ontario, Canada. We're looking for the Tokyo main railway station, you couldn't find it. Car navigation didn't work. So Tim Cook issued a statement saying, guys, we screwed up. For now, go and download Waze. Now, Waze was at the time a successful Israeli startup, but quite anonymous. It didn't have the traction it has today. It became a hit overnight. Everyone downloaded Waze. And a year later, Waze was acquired by Google for about $1 billion. So this is a classic textbook example how one startup can overthrow a market leader at times of crisis. And that market leader is a big tech company themselves. You see, if it happened to Apple, it can happen to any corporation in the world. So if we're talking about what should corporations do at times of uncertainty, we say most of them are focusing on core competencies on one safe and predictable. I'd like to add to the mix partnering or investing in startup. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not safe and it's not predictable and it's probably not working very well because it's early stage technology, but most of the innovation in this world in the last 30 years has been coming from startups. Remember that slide? The top 10 publicly traded companies by market cap. The top seven companies that are technology, they're just 28 years old on average. They were startup just yesterday. And when Warren Buffett, number 8 on the list, is selling all of his share in airline and taking a huge loss, big tech companies or technology in general is proving it's immune to COVID, not just because they had strong Q1 results, but also because they indicate growth in the next quarters. To the extent that even the Fortune 500 CEOs, when they ask in which companies would you invest that is not your own, they're saying Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So how is it possible? How is it possible that the economy is going south and the big tech companies prove to be immune to COVID? And the answer is that the only vaccine to COVID is technology. The only vaccine to COVID is technology. Because, and by the way, I'm not talking about the actual vaccine to the disease. Also, technology will solve that. I'm talking about the tech that is required to sustain the economy, to maintain our economy, our livelihoods. You know, what type of technology do you need? You need a cheap and available software to work from home like this one. You need a cheap and available software to send our kids to school. We need availability of e-commerce so we can get stuff shipped to our door. We need a good internet connection. I mean, can you think what would have happened if COVID were to strike in 2008? Can you think what would have happened if it were in 1991? There was not even the internet. The two scenarios: we would either be forced to stay at home and starve, you know, because you cannot leave, or probably not an option, or we would be forced to go to work and pay a huge toll in human lives. So I started with my last slide. That's my last slide. History suggests that corporations that invest in innovation through a crisis outperform peers during recovery. That is the data of 2008. I think this recession, I try to explain, is going to be by an order of magnitude more significant. And the time to take action is right now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, right now. The corporations that would prevail are not those that would have the most cash in the bank. It's exactly those who would adapt fastest to a new reality. Thank you very much. If you'd like to, if you like the slides, please email me at Fishel at OurCrowd. I wish you success and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.